Good evening to everyone. You're welcome to this capacity building workshop or training session. Here talking is Kwame Romaric, the programs coordinator for the Conflict Lab. We are happy to have you here for this capacity building workshop. I am hoping that whilst we are here, we will have the best of our time together. I'll just indulge on everyone to be focused, well committed. Oh, by the way, can you hear me? If you can hear me, please indicate.
Yes, we can hear you very well.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, so like I was saying, I am wishing that we get ourselves well focused as we are here today for this 2 days training program. We came here with objectives and at our goal will be that at the end of this training session, we are able to meet those objectives. So without too much ado, I will want to share a rundown of the program for this 2 days training session. So I will just share with you on the screen how the program will look like. Okay, can you see the screen?
Yes, now
Okay,
it's clear.
okay. So basically, we for day one we are going to be laying the foundation and writing strong proposal. This session will be a 1 hour session, which will be taken by Raisa, the facilitator. The second session will commence immediately at 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. The facilitator will be Halima. And then for tomorrow, we will be, for the second session, we will be focusing on writing strong proposals. Then tomorrow, same time, 7 p.m., we will begin the third session, which is on monitoring, evaluation, reporting for grants. It will be done by Raisa. And the last session tomorrow, 8 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. It will be on budgeting and compliance, which will be done by Goni Progress. So basically, that is the agenda for this training session. So I will indulge each and every one of us to be focused as we are about to commence. I wish you all the best as we engage in this endeavor. On behalf of the general coordinator who is present with us, we want to declare this training program open. So for today, we'll be calling up on Raisa, who will start with the first session. So this is what happens. Um, After every session, I think we would sign out of the platform. Probably we'll have 5 or 10 minutes break, which will be take time to sign out from the platform. And immediately it is time for the next session. We are signing in back using the same link. So okay. And also before Riza comes in, we will just take a few time to introduce ourselves. So like I introduced myself already, I'm Kwame Romaric, the programs coordinator for the Conflict Lab. We will start with okay, because of time, we may not go. We may not have the opportunity for everyone to go introducing themselves. So using the chat, I will indulge on every one of us using the chat to give your name, probably
I think your internet very weak.
Okay. I was saying everyone should be able to present themselves using the chat. So because of time, we cannot do the rounds. So just indicate your name, the organization you're representing, probably the position you're holding. All right. So I'm giving the floor to Raisa. Raisa, please go ahead.
Hello, everyone. My name is Raisa, and I am going to be a facilitator today for one of the sessions, and of course, another session tomorrow. I'm actually out in public. I'm in London at the moment, so I'm really sorry if there's a lot of background noise. And if at any point in time you can't understand what I'm saying or if it's too loud, just uh, like raise your hand or leave a text on the chat box so that I can see and I can speak accordingly. And I will be keeping my video off so that you can hear me clearer. But it's not going to be an issue because I will be sharing my screen anyway. And we will so the format of the first session that I'm going to do is basically I'm going to go through the process of a grant application in general, and at the end there will be option to ask questions both by raising your hand or by leaving questions on the chat box, and I will try to answer as many of them as I possibly can. And I hope that all of you find this session very informative. And yeah, I think we should start. So just give me a minute. Let me share my screen. Hello, everyone. Can everyone see my screen? Could you please confirm in the group chat or?
Yes, it's clear.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much. So I'll start presenting. Right. So, first of all, thank you to everyone who made the time today to actually join us in this session. I hope that this helps to everyone, irrespective of what kind of background you come from. You might be looking into grant writing as part of your job, or as a student, or as a researcher. In any way, these basic aspects of writing a grant application is usually the same across all fields. So hopefully you will learn a lot from today. And we will be going to a lot of the more expansive things in the next sessions. As you saw, as Romaric introduced that in the second session, we'll look at how you can write it, like, make a strong argument in your grant application. And then in the third session we will be talking about monitoring and evaluation framework, and at the last session we'll be talking about budget. So these are the three important things about grant writing anyway that we will be talking comprehensively in the next sessions. But for now we will go ahead with uh, talking about foundations of grant writings. Now you might be thinking, how or why am I talking about, um, you know, grant writing? Like, what is necessarily my qualification to talk about it? So basically, I've been working with grants for the past 1.5 years. I worked with grant writing in Kenya, in Nigeria, and I'm currently working in it in London. So I have had some experience, and I would love to share it with everyone. And hopefully, we can both kind of learn through these sessions. So the first thing is introduction to grants. Now, all of you, obviously, I would assume that you know what a grant is, but if you don't, it's basically a non-repayable financial contribution from a government, a foundation, or a corporation. So funds can come, as you can understand, can come from government bodies. It can come from foundations. It can come from big MNCs and profit-making organizations. It really depends what they're looking for. And then what the grant really does is support specific activities or services that aligns with the funder's objective. Now, different kind of institutions have different objectives when it comes to fund. For example, if it's a profit-making organization that works with medicine, for example, they might be willing to fund research or fund projects that has to do with health. You would find a lot of, uh, obviously, you guys have heard about Pfizer. Obviously, Pfizer was one of the developers of the COVID vaccines. So Pfizer usually does a lot of these funding things. They're a profit-making organization, but they do fund like different projects that's based on health and raising awareness about some kind of illnesses. Um, and these projects are usually done either in Africa or in Asia or in developing states mostly. Then you have government fundings that you would find regarding research. And these kind of research and these kind of projects can be like very small to very big. So it really depends. And then finally comes with performance expectations, eligibility criteria, and reporting requirements. Now, every grant that you will ever find in your life will always have something called a call for proposals. We will speak a bit more about it in the later slides, but they will always have kind of expectations of the kind of project that they're looking to fund. They will also have what kind of organizations can actually apply for the funding, so which means if you're eligible or not. The recent trend right now is a lot of organizations are looking for youth-based organizations, like organizations that are run by youth or has the majority of the team who are young people. And by youth we mean under 30 or in some cases under 35. So this is a new trend in the last 4 or 5 years. And then we have reporting requirements, and again we'll speak about it a bit more in session 4, where the reporting comes the most handy, because it's regarding budget, and they're very like strict about budget and everything. So hopefully we will be able to talk about this a bit more in the going forward. Sorry. Okay, now what are the type of grants that are available out there? Now, again, as I said, this type of grants is actually applicable irrespective of the field that you're in. They're quite common in, if you're like a PhD student, it will be common, these kind of grants. If you are running an NGO or if you work in an NGO, you will find these kind of grants as well. Um, and so as I said, irrespective of your field, you will always find these kind of grants. So the first type of grant is competitive grant, which is awarded based on merit via scored proposals. Now, usually what happens in competitive grants is that they will have a very extensive criteria of what they're looking for in a project, and every section of the proposal will be scored based on if you can or if you could answer um, like what they're looking for. If you could explain everything regarding your project, they will always sorry for the delay. I think there was a bit of an internet connection from my end. Anyway, let's move forward. So they will always have an extensive list of what they're looking for, and they will judge you and score you based on the proposal. Again, we'll speak a bit more about it in the later slides. Then we have formula grants, which is distributed using a formula. For example, as mentioned here already, population based, which means they're looking for a very it's this kind of grant is very niche. So they're working with a very niche population. They're working with a very specific kind of organizations, and they're very strict about the kind of project that you can do. There's little scope for you to kind of innovate your project. So it's just something that you have to do. And then you have continuation grants, which is renewed funding for successful ongoing projects. Now, this is usually what we call like a second round funding. A lot of the times you will find grants out there which fund ongoing projects. These are projects either that are already have some sort of funding from another organization or the same organization, or this project has been going on for maybe a year or two and has very successful milestones. So it's just, these are continuation grants. New projects cannot apply to these grants usually. But they will always mention this when you have to apply. So in their call for proposal or on their website, you will always find the kind of grant that they're looking to have. So, and then finally, pass-through grants, which is funds redistributed by a secondary agency. Now, this is a bit more complicated, and I think this is more you would see this in PhD projects a lot of the times. If a university has been accepted for a grant from the government, for example, and they're looking to recruit people on the project, there would be like a smaller portion of the grant given to the students or the researchers or something. So it's again like very specific. Um, if you're looking at projects, it could be that a bigger NGO has been accepted for a grant, and they're looking for a secondary organization to work with. Now, a very straightforward example of this could be that a UK NGO, for example, has gotten acceptance for a grant from the UK government, and they are looking to work with, for example, a Libyan organization. And so what happens is they put up this kind of another pass-through grant call for proposal out there from their website or on LinkedIn, and they would be asking for local organizations where they want to work. So as I said, maybe this UK organization might be putting up advertisements or call for proposals in Libya specifically, so that so you would know again that this grant comes from the UK government and was given to a UK organization, but now they want to work with a Libyan organization because their research or their project is in Libya. So I hope this explained the different type of grants. I'll be taking questions at the end, but for now, I hope I was able to explain more or less the kind of grants that there are. Then we have another types of grants based on source of funding. Now, as I already mentioned, grants can come from different types of organizations, governments. USAID obviously was one of the big ones. GIZ is a German based funding that is very, very famous around Africa. You have Norwegian embassy that's some funding in Cameroon, for example, as well. Then we have multilateral. So these kind of multilateral grants come from the UN, World Bank, Global Fund, and organizations like intergovernmental organizations, basically. Then we have private foundations. Again, Gates Foundation is very famous for giving out grants for different kind of STEM researches or STEM-based projects. Then you have Ford Foundation and corporate philanthropy. Google, Coca-Cola, they're always looking for kind of research projects or individual projects to raise awareness among a certain population. And then you have the local or regional funders, county development funds, local embassies. Now, these are a lot smaller in scope, which means these will not be like larger grants, because a lot of the times you will find grants from like $5,000 to $5 million. Honestly, like it's far in between. You would find everything all over the place, but honestly, it depends on what kind of organization is doing the funding. Then we go out for based on purpose or use. As I said, these grants could also depend on what they're looking for. I've already mentioned project-based and research grants. These are the most famous ones. Capacity building is really famous in some African states, and it's usually directed towards more rural areas or underdeveloped areas in a country. Then there are operational type of grants, which are actually a lot rarer. It's not something that happens regularly. You won't find a lot of call for proposals for operational kind of grants. And then finally, emergency grants are obviously crisis responses. Um, you would see them more often than not in conflict zones, for humanitarian aid, and just, like any NGO that works with displaced population or refugees, you would always find that emergency grants are more common in those areas or those regions. But in normal times, in normal countries where there are no conflicts, emergency grants are not very popular. So then let's move forward. Now, key grant documents. Now, this is obviously this is the most important thing that you were going to find. It's called request for proposal or call for proposal or terms of recommendation and stuff. So they have different names, but it's all the same thing. It's basically the donor organization advertising that they are looking to collaborate and fund projects, research, capacity building projects, and everything in between. So these official requests for applications will always include objectives, eligibility, budget, timeline, and criteria. They will also have a section explaining what to mention in the proposal, and will also mention submission process. So it's very important that you as an organization or student or the front page to the page that you're about the criteria have. Another important thing that I feel a lot of organizations or a lot of individuals like kind of are challenged with is eligibility. They think they're eligible for it, but they're usually not. And after all the time that they have spent kind of developing the proposal, they get rejected because they were not eligible to begin with. So it's very important that you are absolutely clear about the eligibility. And my advice is always, if you're confused about something, contact the donor organizations. Most often than not, they will always reply to you within a week or within at least 5 to 10 working days, and they will let you know what the issue is. And also, a lot of the times after they advertise their RFP or their CFP, they will have this discussion session. Like they will, you will see it on their social media, usually on LinkedIn, that okay, we're organizing this kind of question answer session where we explain the call for proposal a bit more, and we also allow interested applicants to ask questions if they have any and clarify whatever confusion that the applicants might have. So my advice is to attend these kind of sessions, these seminars, or at least look at the video. A lot of the times, some organizations will have the video uploaded on their website or on YouTube. So it's important that you go through that and just, as I said, top to bottom, read everything, make notes, read it 2 or 3 times. And if you're working in a team, make sure multiple people are reading it at the same time so that you can brainstorm and know if any of you have missed any details of this RFP. So this is, I think, one of the key and one of the crucial steps of writing a grant, for a grant application. Now, let's move forward. A lot of the times, this request for proposals, they have two ways of moving forward, right? Some organizations like to start with the concept note. Now, a concept note is not an extensive proposal. You will find this kind of concept note in a form of like an online application where you can just fill out a form on Google Docs or just on their website where you kind of explain what your organization does. and what your project is about, what your goals are, who are your team members, and just in general about your organization, and a bit more, and a bit about the objectives about your project. So they will be asking stuff like that. Now, the reason why they do concept note and not a full-blown proposal is that they want to not waste so much time, because going through proposals takes months and months on end. And more well-known organizations like GIZ, you have EU-based fundings, and government funding especially, they get hundreds and hundreds of proposals. So it takes them 6 to 7 months to just go through them and respond the to the applicants. Now, to make sure that they're using their time more effectively, a lot of the newer fundings that are coming out these days, they're starting with a concept note where they ask for like a 2 to 5 page proposal where you include a bit of your problem and solution. You speak a bit about your objectives and outcomes, target population and location, budget estimate, and organizational capacity. And each of these sections run around 250 to 300 words, or even less a lot of the times. So it's just to make the process easier. If you pass the first round of just going through the concept note, it's more likely that you will be asked to either give an interview to speak a bit more about your research or your project, or they would ask you to send in a more detailed proposal. But in the first one, this is what you have to mention. We will be sharing the slides with you, so don't worry if you can't take a note right now. And we will be talking about it a bit more in the second session, where obviously we'll be speaking about how to write a strong proposal. But these are the kind of outlines that you will have. Sometimes you have to create it by yourself, sometimes they will give you a form, sometimes it's just online. So you just have to keep an eye out on what they're looking for. And just again, this will be mentioned in the RFP, so please look into the RFP. Now, after you have submitted the RFP, the concept note for the RFP, if you get selected, you will have to send in a full proposal. Now, the full proposal includes all of the things that the concept note includes, but with more extensive data and a bit more extensive detailing in general. But it'll also include implementation details. You will have to include like a detailed timeline, milestones that you intend to achieve, deliverables, and the kind of people that you have to recruit, monitoring and evaluation, sustainability strategy. So all of these things will come in. Now, this is something that you have to remember, is that the more the amount of the grant is, the more comprehensive and rigorous the proposal will be. Which means if you're applying for a grant that's for like £10,000, they won't ask for a lot of things. But if you are looking for a grant that's like maybe a £5 million grant, then they will ask so much more than what I have mentioned here. But again, this really depends from organization to organization. It depends from project to project. So you just have to look forward to it. One of the experiences that I have had in the past is where I had to develop this sexual harassment and training session that I had to include in the proposal as part of the proposal, because there was going to be because we will be working with a lot of young people, and we will be hiring external facilitators. We'll be working with children. So they were very strict about how we were going to work with the code of conduct, how we were going to work with sexual harassment, and just making sure that our team members are safe, and our people who are our beneficiaries or target group, they are also safe. So these things are extremely important. And again, and then they go for proposal, they will mention their email on one thing they're looking for. If you're confused, please email them. Now, the basic structure of a grant proposal, there are some common components across donors, important, and honestly, I've already spoke about them in the previous 2 slides. Those are very common. You will find them in every single proposal that you ever have to write. Um, Even if they don't ask for it, it's good to include more than they ask, so that they understand that you have a very good understanding about your project and what you're trying to do. So they will be, I think they'll be sold more of the idea, because you do have to understand that what you're trying to do is you're trying to sell the idea of a project. This is not applicable for continuing grants, because in continuing grants, obviously the project is already ongoing. They already have an idea of what the milestones are and what you have done so far, what you have achieved. But if it's a new project and you have never worked on it before, or you have just started working on it, you should just include whatever you think is necessary and whatever will give you a higher chance of getting accepted. Of course, that means that if you have a form or if they've already mentioned what they need, then you don't include more than necessary. But if they've not mentioned it, then go ahead, feel free to add whatever you think is necessary for the project. Now, obviously, it's extremely important that you write a coherent proposal, because if you're not writing a coherent proposal and it does not make sense, the chances of you actually getting accepted is really low. But this is common sense, but still, a lot of the times you would think that you're writing a coherent proposal, but it's good to stay away for it for a bit if you have done the majority of work, and give it to someone else from your team or your friend or whoever you're around and you can trust. Ask them to go through it and ask them to give you a feedback. So I always tell people that it's important that you have enough time before you submit a proposal. Don't work on a £500,000 proposal within 3 days. The chances of you getting accepted is really low, because you will not be able to work on it. At least if it's a bigger amount of grant, make sure that you have a month or two in your hand before you actually submit it, because there will be a lot of back and forth when it comes to the finalized version of your proposal within the team. Then finally, these are something that again will be mentioned in the RFP. So sometimes they will ask for a cover letter, which is like a brief introduction of the project, who's leading the project, a bit about their background, and then just highlighting how the project aligns with the donor's objectives. And then obviously, executive summary is something that again will be mentioned in the RFP. A lot of the times it's good to add an executive summary, because it's a one pager, so you just add like a brief understanding of everything, so that anyone who reads it, they have an overall idea what the project is about. So more often than not, you will find yourself writing an executive summary. My advice: write it at the very end, because once you have done the rest of the proposal, it's easier to write the executive summary, because it's just one page. It's basically a summary, as said, obviously. Then we have problem statement and needs assessment. Now, this is extremely important, because any research, any project that you're doing, you're trying to solve a problem. The whatever evidence, whatever you think to resell the problem. As I said, this is literally a sales pitch. So you really have to sell the problem at hand. And as I said, tips is obviously use current and credible sources. Wikipedia is a very, very bad source to source. So just don't use Wikipedia. Go for newspaper links, journal articles. These are very good places to find data. Government websites will also have a lot of statistics and data that you can use. And yes, avoid emotional appeal. I did say it's you are trying to sell the problem, but it's more important to stay factual than important. Hello, can everyone's saying that my internet is breaking. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yes,
we
we can
can
Yes,
hear
we
hear
you
you.
now,
can.
though your internet was breaking,
Yeah,
Raisa.
yeah,
Yes,
go on.
yeah,
Is okay? Can everyone hear me now clearly?
Yes, we
Yes, we can
can.
hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, right. So, as I was saying, I know, as I mentioned, this is a sales pitch to an extent, but it's important to be factual rather than being emotional. It works better if you're seeing the person in person, but you're not. So, on paper, it's better to use facts. Then we have the project goals and objectives, which we will be speaking a bit more in our next session. And I'm not going to go too much in details because smart, measurable changes, our next facilitator will be speaking a lot more about it. But what it really means is that you have to make sure that these are like very realistic objectives that you can actually make a difference. It's obviously nice to be ambitious when it comes to your project, but it's important to stay realistic as well as ambitious. Then we have methodology and implementation plan. Now, these things, again, will be spoken a bit more in the second session, but I'll just skim through it. Basically, the implementation plan must have key activities. These are activities that will ensure that you can reach your objective. Then you have stakeholder engagement, which means, and by stakeholder, it means everyone, your partners, your vendors, your beneficiaries, everyone, how you're going to engage with them, how you will communicate with them, what their roles are. All of these things will be included in the implementation plan. Then delivery mechanisms. This will come obviously how you intend to deliver a particular task, how you're going to do it. So basically, the hows and the whys are going to be part of the implementation plan. The work plan in general, you can use a Gantt chart or a table. Again, it really depends on what you're comfortable using. It's important to stay specific, precise, and clear. So don't try to make it too fancy or too visual. I mean, it's okay if it's visual, but just, as long as it's understandable and they're not kind of wondering what they're looking at. So just use like a visual sequence for activities and milestones, but I personally use tables are better for me. But if you're looking for charts, if you're into charts, go ahead with charts. It's completely fine. So it really depends on preference. I don't think the donor organization cares for it much on what kind of um, chart or table that you use, but they will, as long as they can understand um, how, like, as long as they can understand what you're saying, that's all that matters. Then we have MEL, which is monitoring, evaluation, and learning. Now, I will not be going through this today because I'm already taking a session tomorrow on this, so we will talk a lot more about it. But it's basically, if I really had to explain it within one line, it's just tracking progress and learning from your mistakes and how you can do better at it. It's okay to make mistakes once you're doing your research or your project. So you just have to make sure that you are learning as you go, you're solving the problems, you are not thrown into a very awkward position, or you're not thrown into a risk that you did not foresee. So again, we will be talking about this extensively in tomorrow's session, so I'll leave it to this. And then sustainability plan is another thing. Now, this is very important that I would have probably mentioned in tomorrow's session, but I will still mention it today, is that what they really want to see is, once the funding is over, how do you intend for this project or for this research to carry on? Like, how does the effect or the outcome of the project carry on for years after years? Now, in some projects, they will mention that they want to see your sustainability plan for the next 6 months, 3 years, 6 years. The highest that I have seen personally was 7 years. And 7 years is just like, that's the maximum I've seen. The lowest that I've seen is 1 year, actually. So I think it's going to be somewhere between 1 year to 7 years, where you have to explain how the outcomes are going to continue after the project or after the funding ends. Obviously, you can tell them that we are going to apply for a renewed funding or we will be using our connections to have a policy integration. We will be building a community where the outcomes will be taken forward for generations after generations. So again, this plan has to be really realistic, so that anyone who sees it or reads it understand that this is something that actually can be specific when it comes to your sustainability plan. So yep. And finally, budget and budget narrative. Again, there will be so much more in session 4 on budget, but if you really have to think about it, budget is basically the main aspect of the project. That's what they're interested about the most, how you're going to use the money that they give you, how, and they will have this whole plan on how they're going to send the money to you, which means in some grants they send you money yearly. So for example, if you have a 5-year project or if you have a 2-year project, they might do it after maybe the first 5 milestones. They might send you the second batch of money, or they might send you on the second year. So it really depends, and you have to mention this in the budget on how you expect the money to come through to your organization as part of your project. So it's just, so you just have to keep a lookout. They will always mention this. They will always have a very extensive financial guideline, so just make sure that you're going through it a lot. And justification, obviously, beside every expense that you make, you have to justify why you're making this expense. This includes recruiting people, so you have to explain why you are recruiting someone in general, and why, how their contribution will make the project to be better. And then finally, there could be additional attachments. For example, they might want to see your registration certificate, your NGO, that you're a nonprofit or a non-governmental organization. They might want to see those documents. Might want to see the CVs of the staff members that you've mentioned in the project proposal. They might want to see maps and datas and MOUs between you and a partner. Or if you're like, if a lot of the times, a lot of NGOs are working together with other NGOs, so it could be like 2 or 3 institutions just working together and making the proposal and sending it to them. So you do have to send in like an MOU that you are in fact partnering with each other, and this is not like a falsified sort of proposal. So these are the like basic attachments that you might be asked to give. Again, this will be mentioned in the RFP, so just keep an eye out on that. So yeah, I think that's about it for today. I will be taking questions for the next 5 to 10 minutes. Um, if if there are questions that I cannot answer, or if I don't have time to answer at the moment, I will email it back to you. So let me just go through the questions. I can see a few on the chat box. I think we have Fast, Lucero. I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name, but there was a question that considering grants are usually direct to short-term projects, shouldn't the proposal only consider output level indicators instead of outcomes? Outcomes are more long-term and do not depend directly on the project. That is true. That is very true. But again, as I said, it really depends on the project. If it's a short-term project or if it's a project that has a smaller budget, they will not be asking for outcomes, but they will be asking for short-term like, I don't know, short-term changes. So they will, so a lot of the times what we do is we do this thing called theory of change, which is like this a visual aid where you show the milestones or the deliverables and how it moves forward to a short-term impact and maybe to a long-term outcome. But yes, they will ask for an impact to the minimum at least. If it's a 1-year project, they will definitely ask for outcomes. If it's for 6 months or 3 months, they will be looking for impact more than an outcome. So that is true. Please, if you have any questions, write down it in the chat, or you can now unmute yourself.
Right. Raisa, I think we have a question up here from I think Kashlau. Please, I hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly.
Okay, I saw one question.
Yeah, let me just copy the question and send again in the chat box so that you see and you are able to respond, please.
Okay. Right. I think
سؤال كشلوت.
yeah, yes. I think she had a question which was, how can we make grant writing more accessible to young people in conflict affected or under resourced communities like Libya, where funding opportunities are rare and internet access can be limited?
Mm. Mm.
Hello? Right. I'm just going to move forward with answering the question. Now, that is a very, very true concern. Finding something that is available to conflict affected areas and with limited internet access. So to be fair, to be very honest, I don't have an answer to that. As far as I know, there are some like kind of, I don't want to say registry, but there could be like Excel files and sheets and stuff like that where there could be a list of organizations that work in conflict affected areas, and you know, just uh, what kind of uh, like projects that they're interested to work in, or even within the conflict area there could be different kinds of projects, right? You could have projects that are focused on women health or children's education or therapy or medicines or anything. Like, there's a lot of things that are important in a conflict affected area. So I think there has to be a registry somewhere out there. I will actually look into it and get back to you if I can. And in order to make this more accessible, I think there has to be more training sessions like this. And I think collaboration is the main goal here for Conflict Lab. As an organization that works towards research in conflict, I think it's very important for us to collaborate with organizations and how we can help um, train young people or train affected people for grant writing, and we would definitely be open to collaborating with organizations like this. So Swad, again, sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, but I think you should definitely contact Conflict Lab after the training, and maybe we can speak a bit more about how we can make this more accessible. So yeah, I think I hope that answers your question. um, Anything else? Anyone else have any questions?
Thanks a lot.
Okay, no worries. Now we have another one from Cebu Siso. Sorry if I'm again pronouncing your name wrong. But the question was, I guess my question is similar to the previous one. Are there any specific pointers you may have for new or smaller organizations that have never received or managed a grant, usually have a hard time accessing funding, even though they may have been doing the work? You know what? I think the most easiest way to do this is get collaborating. So it's very difficult to get grants if you're just an individual organization, especially if you're new. But if you are collaborating with a bigger organization in another country, for example, you are looking at a UK based grant, right? Find NGOs, universities, or different organizations that work in that area who might be interested to collaborate. Give them an email, sit for a meeting, get them onboarded. The chances of you getting a grant is like it increases by 3 times. So I think people should definitely look into that. Collaboration is the way to go. And could you so I hope Sibusiso, I was able to answer your question there. Collaborate with organizations in the donor organizations country. That way it's better. And also, I actually wanted to mention this before, but I want to mention it now. Whatever funding that you're applying for, research on that institution. If they have funded before, or if they have funded in the similar kind of grant, look at the past projects that they have funded. That'll give you a very clear idea on the kind of projects that they usually fund. So it gives you a very nice idea. Um, Now, Lucero has asked us another question, which is, could you explain more about the sustainability strategy? Lucero, I hope you come to session 3. I will be explaining a bit more on that because MEL, like MEL and sustainability strategy, kind of go hand in hand in a bit. So I will be explaining more on that in the next session. So I'm not gonna use the time right now to do it. And yeah, I think I'm gonna wrap up this session today because I do have a train to catch. But please email us. I would love to get back to you. If you have any questions, write it down so that you can ask me in session 3. Maybe I will go back to session 1 as well and answer whatever is necessary. So I hope that's okay. Romaric, the floor is yours. I do have to run. So, so there's one thing, as I said, I have a young organization but can't access funding. Again, collaborate with bigger organizations. That's the only way that you can do it. If you're applying for a US organization, so US organization based funding, or Germany or EU or whatever, find a relevant organization in that country. You will get funding. That's easier to get it because they have a better idea. So just will send us questions, info at lped.org. I will get back to you hopefully, and I really hope that we can collaborate with everyone here and do these trainings more often and really make a change. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for your time. Romaric, the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you very much, Riza, for that presentation. I think from the reaction and interaction, we can copy that it was well received and the impact lives on. So we'll be joining Riza again tomorrow for the third part of the presentation. And right now we'll be having Halima, who joined us as the second presenter for today. So Halima. So Halima is a social development professional with over 10 years of experience working in the development sector, and she's working at the intersection of building resilience against violence, extremism, and she has acquired extensive experience designing, planning, and implementing, and equally monitoring and evaluating peace building and human capacity building programs for projects funded by UNFPA, MacArthur Foundation, Tony Blair Institute of Global Change, the Carter Center, among others. She has attended several local international conferences, including the International Ministerial Conference on Freedom of Religion and the Basel Peace Forum hosted by Swiss Peace, and lots more. So we will have Halima introduce a little bit more about herself and take the second phase of the training. Halima, if you can hear me, please, the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much. I could hear you loud and clear, and I hope everyone can hear me as well. It's a pleasure and a honor being with you all today. I'm gonna try to share my slides. I hope this works. Okay. All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, depending on which part of the world you're joining from. Thank you very much to Conflict Lab for putting this together, and thank you all for making it here. And I am sure that Riza has put us off to a very good start. And so she has provided some basics. She has provided the foundation, so to say, that I will then be mounting bricks on. Hopefully by tomorrow in session 3, she would be providing the roofing of the house we're trying to build. And then by session 4, we would be finishing it. And we have a beautiful house at the end of the day. And so for my session, the second session of this program, I am going to be looking at writing strong proposals. So basically, first things first is just to set expectations. Like I said, we're somewhere now and we have where we want to go. We have the goal, we have the destination that the organizers of this program have in mind. And every single session is a building block that is building on each other to take us to that destination. For this particular session, the objective briefly is to help us understand how to align proposals with donor priorities and language, how to understand the conventional structure of a project proposal. It would also help us to identify and develop smart objectives, as well as how to develop a high quality theory of change. And lastly, how to ensure that we have appropriate gender and social inclusion in our project proposals. First things first. Most of us, I want to believe, based on the form we filled before registering for this program, we belong to various organizations. Some of us own our organizations. We have ideas. We see problems in our societies, in our local communities that we want to solve. We believe that we have something to contribute, we have something to offer, we have a solution to provide that we feel that can help to achieve one developmental or humanitarian achievement or goal or objective. And we believe that we need funds for this, so we want to write grants. But then if we just jump to the grant writing stage, we are skipping some steps. And so in the proposal writing process, the very first thing is the planning. What exactly do you need money for? And then we'll come to the research stage, which is basically about who will you research. That's the donor research. Who will you approach? Who will give you this money? And then the writing, where you actually put together all this idea into something tangible that you can present to the donor. And hopefully you follow up and then you have the decision, you get your funding and you implement your program, your project. Like I said, the very first thing is the planning and the research. You have to determine what you need the money for. You have to determine how you're going to use the money. You have to determine who is the right person to go meet about this fund. Sometimes it doesn't have to be multilateral or bilateral donors. Sometimes even local foundations within your country, your community can fund the kind of projects that you have. Community foundations can fund the kind of idea that you have. So when you know what you need to do, you know how much money you need, you would know better who you need to approach. And so the very first thing is the planning. That is the most important stage. And then at this planning stage, fine, you've planned, you know the problem. Oh, in this community, we have water issue, or it's a gender equality issue, or it's orphan care, or children's education, or girls' education, or it's something to do with economic empowerment of women, or it's social cohesion, bridge building within a community, whatever it is, the program that you're trying to solve based on the challenge within the community. Now you know the problem, you have an idea of how to solve it. You need to determine who is the right fit in terms of who your donor is. And so your donor research is very important because this is what will help you avoid spending hours, hundreds of hours, working together with your team on a project proposal, and then you submit it and you hear nothing back, or you're told no. So if you submit a project proposal to a donor that doesn't fund that area at all, it doesn't matter how beautiful, how innovative, how creative, how superb your idea and your project is, they would still not fund it. And it doesn't matter how rich the donor are, oh, but they gave 250 million to that organization and they gave 300 million to that organization. I am only asking for 50 million. Yes, but they gave 250 million in an area of their interest, and you're asking for 50 million in an area that is not within their philanthropic vision. So the very first thing is to understand the donor's identity. And to do this, you really need to know to do this, you really need to research the donor's mission, their vision, their values. Of course, you get all this information on their website. You cannot be writing a proposal for a donor and you've not even combed through their website. Who are they? What makes them tick? What's their vision? What do they want to achieve in the long term? What are their values? What are their strategic priorities, their thematic areas of focus at this point in time? All of this information will help you to get into the psyche of the donor, because your goal when writing your proposal is that you want to put yourself in the frame that the person that will review this proposal would be. And you want to ensure that that person will pick up your proposal, look through it, and say yes. So you need to get into the same psyche that this person will be in when they are reading. You also want to explore their past and their current grantees. So what are the kind of projects they funded before? Who are the kind of organizations they funded before? Some organizations, for example, if you want to work with the European Union does not fund local organizations directly. It doesn't matter how good you are, you need a European organization as an intermediary, as the main grantee, and then you would be the implementing partner or the sub-grantee, whatever it is. Is it that kind of an organization? Is it an organization that doesn't fund locals, that expects local organizations to be sub-grantees, or is it an organization that is actually looking for local organizations? Is it an organization that is interested in women-led local initiatives? Is it an organization interested in youth-led initiatives? You need to know what are the interests of this donor. That would help you know whether you fit in or no, this would be a waste of your time. Also look at current grantees, because donor priorities also shift, they change. Donors are not also static. I know organizations, Tony Blair Institute, for example, I worked with them. They funded our project I think 2018, thereabout, about 2016 to 2019, thereabout. They were really working a lot. They were funding projects related to peace building, violent extremism in Nigeria, in Kenya, but now they're not doing that. So you can't just, because this organization funded this kind of project 10 years ago, you still want to bring that kind of idea to them. Are they still funding that now, or has their priorities shifted? So you need to know this. You need to know their funding focus areas. What issues do they support? What regions do they support? Some donors just, oh, our programming is focused on Southeast Asia and Africa, or it's just Africa, or it's Sub-Saharan, or it's Middle East. It's Middle East and North Africa region. Some donor organizations have this kind of regional priorities. You need to know that. If you are a Sub-Saharan Africa organization, you can't be applying for grants for an organization that is focused solely on Latin American organizations. Which populations do they support? You cannot bring a project related to drugs and things like that, and you want to bring it to UNICEF if it's not related to their area. UNICEF is concerned about anything children. UN Women or UNFPA is concerned about women and reproductive rights and things like that. So you need to know which populations do they support. Oh, okay, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Oh, they are really interested in anything health and vaccination and immunization and women's development and things like that. You need to know what they support. And also pay attention to what they do not fund. Pay attention to what they do not fund so that you do not pitch them for that kind of program. Some organizations will be generous enough to tell you on their website. I know organization like Open Philanthropy does that. They'll tell you what they fund, what they do not fund. So you have to find out. Also, look at the size of grants they do. And some organizations, if you scroll their site and their previous grantees, you can see that they've never given any grantee, maybe they've never given anything more than $1 million. And then you're going to ask them for $10 million. Or you can see that the kind of projects they fund, they fund mid-size range. The project usually ranges between 1 million to $5 million. And then you're going to them to ask for 100,000. A colleague used to share an experience when we were working with the EU on a project proposal, and we went with a proposal, I think it was for 100,000 euros. And this officer that was gonna, work on the ground, he took the paper, the proposal, and he was just flinging it like this. What am I going to do with this? And he told us blankly, this was several years back, like 8 years ago, and he said, see, let me be frank with you. The level of efforts in terms of the bureaucracies, the checks, the approvals, the levels of approvals that this project proposal has to go to get the requisite funding, the level of work we are going to put in for this 100,000 euro proposal is the same as we would do for a 1 million euro proposal. And so nobody wants to spend this much time on just 100,000. He was the one who actually told us, my friends, you know what? Go and bring me a proposal for 350,000. Let's have that as a pilot while we work on the bigger proposal. And that's what we did. So you need to know the size of grants that the donor funds. What kind of support do they give? Some donors, they are not ready, they are only ready to fund your projects. They are not ready to really fund your overhead, your operating expenses. You need to know some have their benchmark. The admin cost cannot be more than 5%, 10%, or whatever it is. You need to know. Some have, their policies in duration. It can't be more than a 2-year grant. So you don't go and give that organization a 5-year grant. Basically, review the requirements. Research their decision making. Who are those that will be making the decision on the proposal? If there is a way to have some kind of interaction, to get in the face of that person, by all means, jump at it. Some organization would organize a kind of training session or ask me anything sessions before the deadline of the proposals. Jump on that. Ask meaningful questions. Don't ask questions that are clearly written on the RFPs that shows that you didn't do research. Ask meaningful questions. Ask questions that let them get interested. Oh, I want to see the proposal of that organization. That's what you want to look at. Of course, you have to also look at the application cycles. What are their deadlines? What are their criteria? Like I said, you get all of this information from their website. Definitely start with their website. Start with their, check their annual reports. Check their reports for the last 5 years. You will see all those they've granted. You will see all the kind of focus areas they've been supporting. You will see it. For US organizations, definitely check their 990s because they have to file that every year. Their social media, their grantee list, publications, here and there, we see RFPs being posted, and peer referrals. So yes, organizations, we're working with this organization. They funded this organization, or they funded this project. You could also pitch to them. Basically, what we are saying here is make sure that you fit with that donor before you pitch to them. Otherwise, you might just be trying to force a square peg into a round hole, and it can be very frustrating when things do not go your way. Another part of this knowing the donor is knowing their language. This you can really see by what I have said earlier, their websites, their reports, their strategy documents, their blog posts and social media posts. You would see their tone, the keywords, the kind of phrases they frequently use. Use those ones. Try to use what they use, and as much as possible, but ensure that you still maintain your authenticity. You don't want it to be as if you're just being robotic and just repeating everything they've said in the RFP or on their website word for word, but try to, as much as possible, to conform to their own language. I remember once I was working on something for a particular organization. I talked to someone I knew who worked there, and one of the tips she gave me said, this is very small, but if you do it, they would notice. as part of their internal, rule, their own thing, anywhere they are writing the name of the organization, like whether it's in a post or something, they'll put it in italics. So the organization's name is in italics, but that's something for their staff to know and to follow. Like that's the format for their staff to follow. So, but if you as an applicant does something like that, they will definitely catch it. It makes you stand out to them. So if you definitely know anybody within the organization that you're trying to submit a proposal to, it's a good idea to talk to them if it is okay, if it's not weird, if there is no conflict of interest, and see what you can learn and how that can be helpful. And so, of course, in all of these, avoid jargons, because sometimes the person reviewing the proposal is not exactly an expert in the field. They may be a very good grant manager, project manager, but they may not have technical expertise in your field. For example, you're a medical doctor or health practitioner, you're working on something to do with medical aid in rural communities or something like that. And then you're submitting a proposal to do something in this area, and you're using medical terms that the layman does not understand. Don't just assume that the grant reviewer is also going to be a medical doctor. So prioritize clarity over complexity. Also, in terms of your metrics and outcomes, look at, like I've mentioned earlier, that you look at their past reports and things like that. From there, you can have an idea, oh, do they usually prefer this kind of indicators to that? And what kind of reporting formats do they prefer? Is it monthly, annually, quarterly, something like that, so that you frame your proposal in that way? Of course, if your proposal is not framed that way, if, for example, they like quarterly report and you have a biannual reporting template in your proposal, that doesn't necessarily mean that they won't work with you. It means that they would work with you to reframe things. If they're going to work with you, you would need to make the adjustments to conform with their own formats. But if you already know and you've already done it according to their format in the first place, it makes life easy for everybody. And who doesn't want their life easier? Who doesn't want their job made easier? Everybody does. So your goal is to make the job of the grant officer on the other end easier. And lastly, emphasize how your project advances their own objective. So I know it's very tempting to be selfish. You are in the middle of the problem of your community. You're really passionate about it. You really want to solve it, but don't think you only. Think about the donor also. What would interest them? Use we language. What would catch their fancy? What do they want to achieve? Because they're also not just throwing money away. It's not like, oh, they have a lot of money, they don't know what to do with it, and they just want to give it out. No, they have strategic objectives too. So you have to align your proposal to their strategic objectives. So basically, all I have said is that you have to research and find the right fit. Ensure that what you do or what you're proposing to do fits the funder's interest. Because the why, you want to do what you want to do, is just as important as the who you're talking to. So that's the first part of this presentation. The second part I'm going to go through now is the elements of a good proposal. So now you know we need a proposal. You've already known from Razor all the different kind of donors out there. You know now how to do your donor research. So let's assume you've determined, yes, this is the donor. So let's say MacArthur Foundation is who you want to write for. What should your proposal look like? Usually, if it's a solicited proposal, there might, or it's very likely that there is a template. So some of these donor organizations, as they are releasing the request for proposals, they may release a template. This is what they want to see. Some they would even have specific guidelines. Oh, this 200 words max. This area 1,000 words max. This area, or maybe they can just give you generic. The whole proposal should not be more than 10 pages or 5 pages or whatever. If they have provided a template, please follow the template to the letter. If they have provided their own template, follow it to the maximum. What I am sharing with you now is useful for if they haven't provided a template or if you're making an unsolicited proposal. Some donors allow you to just submit proposals if it's within their area of work, and then they would review, and if it fits, they will reach out to you. So if you want to do that, then you have to ensure that your proposal meets it has all of this. The very first thing is your title, definitely. What exactly are you doing? We need to see the title. An executive summary that is very summarized, gives a brief snapshot, the bird's eye view of everything this proposal is all about. So what's your project? Who are the beneficiaries? How much are you asking for? How long would it be? All of that should be in the executive summary, but really still concise. The next thing is, in some proposals, and that's why I said if the donor has a template, follow it. Some may call it justification, some may call it rationale, some may call it need statement. It's all referring to the same thing. It's basically, some may even call it background, context. It's basically you telling us what's happening, what's the problem, what do you, like, what's happening? Why are you even writing this proposal? So what's the need? There are various need analysis tools that you should have used to come up with this, whether you are using a problem tree, objective tree analysis, for example. So you determine what the need is. Then the next thing is your project description. So now you've told us the problem. So your need statement is the problem. Then you want to tell us the solution. So that's your own project is the solution. And so here you want to tell us the goals and the objectives of your project, which I would go into shortly. Your strategy, what do you want to do? What's the methodology? Yes, you want to achieve this objective. You want to make 200 women become financially empowered by this measure, or you want to increase the number of girls who finish secondary school by 20% in Bambiala community. How? So you need to tell us your how. Then you need to tell us your monitoring and evaluation plan. So how are you going to monitor progress, to learn, to feed the learning back into the project? What exactly are you going to do? And then your work plan also, which is where you talk about timelines as well. Also, the administration, who are those going to be doing this? Like, who is the team behind this? Or this is the director? You can put a brief bio of those who would be doing. So that's the background of the team. So, this is a project director. This is the experience. This is the project for accountants. They've managed. So if you're bringing a project accountant that has managed $10 million before and you're asking for $2 million, it looks like, yes, they can handle it. Then your budget, of course, the whole essence of all this is that you're asking for money. So how much are you asking for? How would it be spent? Of course, your budget has to be tied to your project methodology. The activities has to align with the budget. And then you can have appendices, which would differ based on the proposal. Sometimes the appendix could include some research, extra research, or things like that, or maybe if you conducted some project, some analysis, some stakeholder analysis, needs analysis that supported the idea that you have in the project, you then want to attach it to show them that you really did your homework. Then, of course, there is a cover letter that would, accompany the entire package, really saying, yes, this is us, our organization is this. So usually that will be written by the CEO of the organization. I am this is my organization, this is what we do, this is what we've done before. Attached is a proposal asking for this amount to do this work, basically. That's what your proposal should look like. In terms of the essentials, what you should make sure, your checklist. Ensure that all the requirements of the funder has been met. So everything they asked for, make sure it's there, all the things they asked you to include, the format, make sure everything is done according to the funder's request. also the deadline. Always have buffer. If the deadline of the project is May 30, your team, give yourselves May 20 as the deadline, so that there's a buffer in case somebody fell sick, something happened. You shouldn't be working with May 30, because many of these funders would not allow extension. In fact, if it's not been submitted to an email, if it's for you to attach something on a particular site, once the time, if they said it's 11:59, once it's 11:59, the link no longer works. Also, pay attention to time zones. This is very important. So you are in Cameroon, you're in Nigeria, you are in Costa Rica, or you are in Singapore. The donor says 11:59 EST. Do the conversion to your own local time and know when the day and time should be. So because if they said 6 a.m. Or 9 a.m. in South Korea, is like it's yesterday for me, or it's tomorrow, depending. So it really is important that you pay attention to the time zones as well. Also, like I said, your proposal should have a clear descriptive title. So we need to really know what you're doing, and I'm sorry, yeah. So it's important to ensure that. Then, and this is also very important, the proposal should be a cohesive whole. It should be logically built. Each session should flow logically into the next. This is very important because usually writing a proposal is not a one-person job, depending on the size of the organization. If it's like a local NGO initiative that you just started, in fact, you are the boss and the apprentice and the director and the CEO and everything, you are the only one, maybe. But if you are even a team of 5 working on the proposal together, you have to ensure there has to be alignment. You need to have one person responsible for the final draft, proofreading, editing, to ensure that the language, rhyme, everything. It's not that somebody in the needs section at the top said that the problem is lack of water. And then in the program methodology, another person said the problem is climate change. Everything has to, and even if they relate to other, you have to show how it aligns. It's not that the project director said there would be training and then empowerment with seed fund, and then the project accountants who decide the budget only put budget for training without budget for seed fund. That would be a mess. So please ensure that it's a cohesive whole, that everything ties together. It's really, really important. I've said before, language should be clear and concise. No jargons as much as possible. If you have to use jargons or terms or acronyms, please explain them, whether you would have a glossary at the beginning or at the end, or the first time you use it. Make sure that a lay person reading the proposal will be able to understand it. They don't need to have a technical background, medical background, anything background. They can understand what you're saying. So that is for the entire proposal. Now, in the entire proposal, we do not have the time in this session to go through each of those very components, but I'm just going to double down on at least 3 of them. So we're going to look at goals and objectives, we're going to look at theory of change, and then we're going to look at gender and social inclusion, and we're going to round it up. So with regards to the goal and objectives, the goal is usually just one. It's broad, it's non-quantifiable, it's long-term. Most likely, most practicably, your project alone will not achieve it. Realistically, it's just this broad picture. It's like someone asking you, What's the world you want to see? Where do you want to see your community in 5 years? It's conceptual, it's abstract, it's unquantifiable. So I am doing peace building related work of religious freedom work. My goal is to see a world where everybody's religious freedom is respected and acknowledged. That won't be achieved with one project, even if it's a $5 million project. But it is expected that we would move some inches closer towards goal would be broad, and that's totally fine. It is your objectives that has to be more tailored. It has to be measurable. It's related to your own project. It is what your own project will do, what it must do to contribute to the goal. So sometimes, depending on the language of the donor, it may be referred to as intermediate changes. But what's important is that it has to be SMART. I want to believe that most of us here are used to the acronym SMART. It's specific, it's measurable, it's attainable, it's relevant, and it's timely. So it's specific to avoid different interpretations. So if your project is targeting women, then it has to be women. It can't be women, children, parent, father, everybody. No, you have to be specific. If it's for the entire community, then let's be clear. It has to be measurable. We have to be able to measure and monitor and evaluate the progress. You can't just ask a donor to give you even $50,000, even 50,000, and you can't measure progress. But I know the idea. I know the idea will work, but how would we measure that it would work? Nothing. Nobody would fund that. It also has to be attainable. And this is in relation to three things: the problem, the goal, and your organization. It has to be let me start from the rear, your organization. If you are an organization that is just starting out, maybe the biggest project you managed is $10,000, and then you want to just execute a $1 million project. Is it attainable? No. No funder would give you that money. Or you are an organization of just youths working on all so far your experience has been in climate change and environmental justice. And suddenly now you want to delve into programming related to, let's say, racial justice. You don't have any experience. Yes, is there a need for programs in racial justice? Yes, but is your organization well equipped to attain that? No. So also the goal of the project, is it attainable? Is your objectives attainable with regards to the goal? So like I said, the goal is broader. So the goal is to achieve peaceful coexistence between Muslims and Christians in Nigeria. That's a goal, yes. And what's your own objective? Is it attainable in relation to that goal or in relation to the problem? So all of this is something that you really need to think about. It also needs to be realistic. That means you have to be able to achieve those objectives within the available resources and time. So you cannot try to want to squeeze a project that requires 5 years into 2 years. That's not realistic. So maybe you want to do a project that would work with girls. You want to recruit girls that are not going to school and then put them in school and sponsor them through their secondary education. And secondary education requires 6 years, but your project funding and everything is for only 3 years. That's not realistic. The resources and time would not allow you to realize that. It means after 3 years, no more funding, the girls will drop out. It also has to be time bound. Every project has to have a project timeline, whether it's a short term. Some projects can be as short as a one-off 1 month project, 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. Yes, depending on the need of the project. I know a project that has been, it's a gifted program. It has been running now for over 10 years. It's a Gifted is girls identified for training, education, and development. So it identifies girls from indigent homes and put them in school. It's been running from it's taking at least one cohort of girls from through the whole of secondary school, 6 years, through university. Some of them are medical doctors. In fact, all of them are graduates now. Those who completed, of course, there was a dropout rate, very low. And then there's another cohort in the program. So this is a program that has been running for roughly 10 to 12 years now. So yeah, a project can be very long term and it can be as short as 1 month, but it has to be smart and it should answer the following questions. Why? Why are you proposing what you're proposing? What approach will you adopt? When will you conduct this project? That's the time. Where will you implement it? So this is in Kachala community, or this is in these 3 states, or this is in these 3 regions of Ghana. Who will be the primary stakeholders or beneficiaries? Is it targeting women, young girls, young boys, religious leaders, and or even policymakers, stakeholders, government officials? Who are your beneficiaries? Who will be, using anything from the project, benefiting from it? So this is just a sample goal, which is to increase women's independence through microfinance projects. You can't have this as an objective, for example. Increased women, which women, how many women, how, where, through what? Microfinance project. Okay. So it's not smart, it is broad. The objective says our microfinance project will assist 150 to 200 women. So we know the kind of project it is. We know the number of beneficiaries. We know the demography, so we know it's women in the target communities to take a measurably more active role in the running of their households and greater involvement in their communities and this, and that. Overall measurable financial status by an average of 20% over the first year. Now, even this objective is not perfect. The goal is abstract. It's increasing independence. That's fine for a goal. The objective is more specific. It's achievable within a short term. It's 1 year. It's measurable, which is improving 150 to 200 women's financial status by 20%. The rest of those blah, 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 it's not really needed. It's not measurable. It's not specific. So those can go into your explanation, but they don't need to go into the objective itself. Even this improving 150 to 200, that's not specific enough. You need to determine, because even for your budget, you can't say 150 to 200. If you need $2,000 per woman, how much will you be asking for? Are you asking for 150 women or for 200 women? You have to be specific. So it is still not specific enough. We don't have time in a different setting. We would actually have various goals and objectives for us to work on and analyze and see what is wrong and what is right and how to improve and what should be taken out and put in. But this is just a 1 hour session, and I know that my time is running, so I have to run also. But basically, I hope you get the idea of what the objective should look like. Then the next part is the theory of change. If I am to define this in one word, or one sentence rather, I would say that the TOC is just an explanation of how and why a program works. That's just it. How does your program work? Why does your program work? That's it. Well, a more detailed explanation is that it is a visual and narrative explanation of how and why a desired change is expected to happen in a particular context. So pick any issue you're working on: women empowerment, children's education, What else? Social cohesion, racial justice, environmental justice. What's the change that you want to see? How would you see that change? Why is it expected to happen in that context? So it's a step-by-step pathway. So every proposal should have a theory of change. Every single proposal should have a theory of change. It maps the step-by-step pathway from what you would do, the activities, to the impact you want to make, the assumptions and the conditions that must hold through. And I'll explain what this means. So the theory of change, step by step, the first is the input. So what do you need? The resources, the staff, the funding, the partnerships, the knowledge. Okay, so if we have all of these inputs and we do all of these activities, it's training, it's advocacy, it's empowerment, it's providing seed grants, it's all of this, then we would achieve this output, which is the immediate tangible result. Oh, we trained 200 women. Oh, we enrolled 20 girls in school. Oh, we built 2 toilets in this school. Whatever, very tangible, number of sessions, number of people with very tangible things you did. But the outcomes, that will be the next step. What are the changes as a result of what you did? So it's not just enough that, oh, we enrolled 20 girls in school. 6 months later, how many of them are still in school? 1 year later, how many of them are still in school? Not just being in school, how are they performing in school? So these are the outcomes. And then the long term, the impact, which is the long term. Oh, because we enrolled these 20 girls in this school, they went through, they completed their education. Now they're empowered, they can work, they can get, white collar jobs. Because of that, their family socioeconomic level has increased. They're able to make healthier choices. Has been reduced, youth has been empowered. So that is more long term. That's the impact. And within these are feedback loops because you're supposed to be learning. If you know it all, you have no business in project management. If you know everything, if you have nothing to learn, you have no business in project management because you're dealing with humans, and humans are the most difficult species to manage. Things would happen. People would change. People will behave in ways that you do not expect. In fact, there would be surprises, and some of them would be good. You would even see outcomes that you did not plan for, and they're good. So you learn, you reshape your strategy. Another part of theory of change are assumptions. So this is the invincible logic behind your theory of change. Because when you're making a theory of change, you're saying that, oh, if you give us $5 million, we will use it to conduct 10 trainings and 20 outreaches and empower 200 women. And when we do that, they would be well empowered, and then their socioeconomic status will increase. And when that happens, there will be less crime in society. You are making assumptions, even if you're not saying it. But in project, you have to say it. We want to see your assumptions. Assumptions are if-then statements. It's like a flow chart. If we train youth, then they will gain employment. If policies are improved, then communities will access services. If we provide sanitary and hygiene items for girls in schools, then more girls will stay in school during their period. If we provide empowerment for women, then there would be less cases of domestic abuse. For example, whatever it is, there are assumptions that you are making. And there are different assumptions. Some of these are contextual. So you are assuming that ceteris paribus, all things being equal, all external conditions remain stable, nothing will change, no policy somersault. There have been projects, and I'm sure many of us, the field has undergone a wave of change over the last 6 months that has affected some projects permanently. For many of them, perhaps when those projects were being designed, the assumption was that there would be no policy change, but there has been policy changes and that has affected the project, and definitely that would have impact on the outcome. There are also behavioral assumptions. So we are assuming that target groups will engage as expected. For example, an organization developed a project on girls' education. They were to, enroll girls in school, sponsor them and all of that. And they started, and they found out that despite the fact that they were providing everything, like they were going to sponsor and everything, even give money, but the parents were not allowing the girls. So it was after some more stakeholder engagement, they realized some of the reasoning behind the refusal. Oh, if these girls go to school, if they're overeducated, they will not get husbands or things like that. And then they're able to work with those community members. So you can't just assume, it's an assumption when you're defining the projects that, the target group, the beneficiary will just engage, that the community leader, the king, or the whatever the title is holding, would allow you to engage his community members, that the husbands would allow their women to participate in your projects and be empowered. We've seen cases where organizations are ready to empower women, provide training, provide seed fund, and the men refuse. They do not allow their women to participate. Oh, you want to, they're gonna grow wings. We won't be able to control them anymore. Such that the organization now has to do extra work of stakeholder engagement that was not planned for, that was not budgeted for, before they can even start the programs that they budgeted and planned for. So these are risks, these are assumptions that you're making as you are designing your project. Then institutional. You are also assuming that partners will follow through on commitment. This is if you are, in a partnership, if it's a consortium, if you as a small organization is trying to work with a bigger organization, if it's a, group of organizations working on the project together. So there's also the assumption that everybody will do their part. And trust me, it doesn't always work that way. We've worked with organizations. Sometimes I've had the experience where, oh my goodness, their turnover was so high. Like staff was always coming and going. You come to this meeting today, you are dealing with one program officer. You come to the next meeting, it's a different program officer. That other one has left. This new person is new on the job. They're just trying to learn. You are trying to bring them up to speed. And just as things are about, they are finally getting the hang of it, they've gone. It's a new hire. We had to stop working with them. So things like that could happen. And then there's also the causal assumption. So you are assuming that the activity will indeed lead to the intended change. You are assuming that indeed, if you train youth, then they would get employment. But there have been cases where people have been trained. In fact, people have been educated, even master's level, but then there are no jobs. So these things happen. And why does your assumptions matter? Because the donors want to see that you have thought through all the risk and complexity. It doesn't mean that you can avoid everything, but you would show how you can mitigate the risks that you can mitigate. It shows that you are aware of the complexity. It makes your theory of change, more testable, more adaptable, more honest. They can see that, yes, you really did your homework. You know what you're doing. You know the context. If there is a security risk, for example, you need to mention, okay, we are aware of this risk. This is how we mitigate it. Oh, we have a security firm that we work with that provides these security services and all of that. Fine. It's better than you just not talking about it, as if we don't all know that engaging in this particular context has this kind of risk. Finally, for theory of change, it has to be clear. You need clarity. It's clear, it's measurable, it identifies the process causing the change. So we'll do this, it will lead to this, it will lead to this, it will lead to that. It draws on research. So it can't just be abstract. You can't just sleep and dream and wake up one day and, oh, based on my dream, I think if we do this and this and this and that, it will lead to this. No, it has to be based on research, maybe published, verifiable research, or some other project experiences. Oh, in this project we learned this and this, or even project that another organization did. Maybe the evaluations, the reports from other projects. They did this project, then based on that, they identified that this is the gap that is still left that needs to be filled. And so we are now showing that we are now coming to fill that gap. It has to show rigor. You have to show a change process that doesn't have gaps. We can't see that, oh, you're going to train people, but you're not empowering them with anything. But at the same time, you're expecting them to start a business. How? There should not be gaps. Then it also has to be feasible. Your intervention has to be cost effective. It has to be achievable. All of those things we've said about the SMART objectives, we have to see them in your theory of change as well. The last part of my presentation today is about gender and social inclusion. This is really about ensuring that people of all genders, abilities, ages, ethnicities, races, socioeconomic backgrounds, whatever, can participate in and benefit from a program equally. Of course, this also depends on the target of a program. So if it is a program targeting women, like the example we gave before, we're looking for 200 women to empower. Definitely, men would not be included there. That doesn't mean that we are excluding them. It just means that they are not part of our target beneficiaries. But in the women we are bringing in, we want to ensure the diversity of ages, of ethnicities, of socioeconomic backgrounds, of abilities. You understand? So it's not just because, oh, it's a women program. So there is still an element of inclusion, or there has to still be elements of social inclusion at every point. So it's a program targeting children. So it's a children education program. Are you only targeting children from one ethnic group, from one area of the community, neglecting other areas, from one region of the country, neglecting other regions? Are you only considering people, are you neglecting people living with disabilities in your programming? So it's really important that you think about all these different dimensions as you develop your proposal. So having inclusion helps to increase the effectiveness of your impact, because we need everybody and we cannot afford to leave anyone behind. It's in the interest of equity. It promotes resilience and sustainability. When you have everybody, there are less chances of having spoilers. So you're in a community, you want to site boreholes or wells or taps, whatever is source of water, and then you're not including the entire community. You go site it in a place that only benefits one part. If you're not careful, people from the other side who feel excluded might actually be destroying it. They could sabotage your project. So it's important to really ensure that you're including everybody. It's also part of funder requirement. A lot of funders today, irrespective of the changing landscape, a lot of funders still expect inclusion. It also addresses the systemic barriers and power dynamics that I believe we are all aware of, that some groups have always been mostly excluded. Groups like women and girls, people living with disabilities, ethnic and religious minorities, people of different gender identities, elderly and youth. Sometimes it's the youth being neglected because we believe that, oh, only the elders know what they are doing. The youth, oh, they are young, they don't know anything. They are just playing. Sometimes it's the elders being neglected because the youth believe, oh, it's our time, we know it all. This is a youth-led, it's our time, it's, and just neglecting the elders. But we need everybody on board. We need all the help we can get. And it's also part of effective stakeholder engagement. So how do you design with inclusion in mind? Right from your needs assessment, where you assess the need for your project, use disaggregated data. We just don't want to know that, oh, 70% of people living in Nnewi face this. What are the percentage when we look at it from gender perspective, from age? Oh, maybe if you do it by age, you then find out, oh, it's people between the ages of 25 to 35 that are most affected by this problem. And then you can target your project more effectively. Or you realize, oh, people of disability are mostly affected by this. So in your consultations and stakeholder engagement, include everybody. Also, when you're doing your problem statements and objectives, frame problems through the gender social lens, depending on the kind of project. Set objectives that address specific barriers to inclusion. So if it's a project that involves everybody, ensure that you cater for how women are involved, how youth are involved, ensure equitable participation. Sometimes from experience, if you're having focus groups and it's a mixed group of men and women, the women don't talk. They can't express themselves freely depending on the community. Have separate ones so that the voices of the women are well represented. Budget for accessibility measures. Do you need to provide sign languages? Do you need to ensure that you get a venue that is accessible for someone using a wheelchair? Do you need to provide childcare support so that women who are young mothers or mothers with young children can participate? Do you need to provide transport, which could make people of some socioeconomic class unable to access the benefit while others can? You have to be wary and plan for all of this. Then in your M&E, you also need to use gender sensitive indicators. So we want to see the big picture, but we also want to see changes related to women, to youth, to people living with disabilities, and all those other minorities. Lastly, language matters. Gender and social inclusion is not just about ticking a box, oh, they said we should include women. Oh, they said there must be 30% women on our board. Just look for, no, it's not just ticking the box. It's empowering. It has to be really, really true. Like we have to be sincere and honest about what we are doing. We have to bring in people who can really make contributions. And we also have to be able to allow them to make those contributions. Because sometimes people talk about inclusion, but then they just bring the people in just for the optics. But they are not allowing those people to contribute the way they are supposed to contribute. So it's important to avoid stereotypes and deficit framing. This is where you're viewing a particular group as, oh, because they have been neglected, disenfranchised. So you're using language that is stripping them of their agency. So we also have to be careful about that. This is where I'll stop. I know I have spent too much time. I'm hoping we would still have some time for questions and answers. I hope that you have been able to get one thing or the other from this, and I hope that this would be beneficial to us. Just before I stop, as Reza was concluding our presentation, there was a question about organizations that have not gotten grants before. And yes, she gave a very good response, partnership. And I was just going to add to that you also need to be realistic. If you are an organization that has never received grant funding of, $100,000 before. You have no business going to ask for $500,000. It doesn't matter how big good your idea is. We have to learn that we need to start small. And also, she talked about partnering with organizations in those countries. You can also partner with organizations in your own country, organizations that are already more established, that are working in the area that you are interested in. You can partner with them as a sub-grantee. That way you learn the ropes, you leverage them, you learn from them, and then gradually you can stand on your own feet. As youth, I know it is very challenging getting funding. There's the idea that we don't know what we're doing yet. We are not yet tested and trusted. And we do know that youth have a lot to offer. We also have to be aware that unfortunately, there have also been cases of youth-led organizations that got funding and squandered it and did not implement. And some of these things have stained the whites of those who are willing to do real work. We have to be aware that there are some of these challenges, but nonetheless, we should not get discouraged. Rather, we should continue to push. Also, you don't have to focus solely on big donors only, big funders only. You can also work with small donations, small donors, even individual donors, small community organizations and foundations that are given small grants. You can take those ones and use them to build credibility. Let your work speak for itself. When your work speaks for itself, the big donors will be the one coming to meet you. They would help you to do whatever you need to do to get the proposal to their standards. They will help you to do whatever you need to do they will build your capacity. And this is what I have experienced myself. When our organization started, we were just doing our own thing. We've never received international donor funding before. We weren't really so interested. We just do individual funding, local funding, and we're doing our own thing. But it started with Tony Blair Institute being interested in our work. They trained us in monitoring and evaluation. They supported us in areas. They would actually hire staff to work with your own staff, or second your staff with their own staff. So like your project accountant with their own accountant, something like that, and help them work through those projects if they are really interested in what you have to offer. And by the time you do that with them for the life cycle of an entire project, for the next round, you're standing on your own. You don't need anybody anymore. And then you can start gunning for the other big donors. I really hope that this helps. And I look forward to seeing us going places and really, really getting the fundings that we need for all our beautiful ideas. Thank you very much. So I'm going through the slides. Sorry, the charts now. So question about certificates, I think that's to the organizers. Okay, that has been answered. How do you know if a donor is open to receive proposals outside any application process? So like I said, if you look at their websites, they would usually have that information if it's a donor organization. If they don't, you can write them to ask. Usually there is a contact email, something like that. You could also look at the staff page and see if based from that you can get a sense of who and who is working on their project or something like that, or their grant, and see if you could connect with that person. Just reach out and ask. So difference between goal, objective, outcomes, and outputs, I think I later answered this, so I guess it came before I answered it. But the goal is broad. It's not specific. It's like vision. It's long-term. It's broad. You alone or your project alone cannot achieve the goal realistically. The objective is what you and your project can achieve. The objective will contribute to the goal. So the goal is to see that all women, the goal is gender equality, all women being empowered. But what you can only do is that you can only work on 200 women from Makeway Village. That's your own objective. So if you are able to bring 200 women from that village out of poverty, you have contributed to achieving that goal, even though you haven't really solved the poverty problem for all women everywhere. The outcomes are the immediate output and outcome. Output is immediate. So you said you're going to organize town hall meeting. You organized a town hall meeting. That's an output. You conducted 5 training sessions. That's an output. You conducted 10 workshops for community leaders. That's an output. 10 workshops conducted for 200 community leaders. That is an output. Outcome is the impact of that output. So as a result of the workshop, 5 community leaders have now been convinced on the importance of women empowerment and have now supported their women starting businesses. That's an outcome, so to say. So should a concept note have a theory of change? It depends on the donor and how much, but definitely it should have a theory of change, no matter how small, even if it would just be a small paragraph. I know concept notes would have less pages, so you may not be able to include like a full TOC with the diagram and visuals and all of that, but include at least a paragraph. I think it's very good practice. And someone said they almost missed this session because of time zone. Yes, you really, really have to pay attention to time zone if you're working in the international scene. It happens a lot. You can miss the deadline for submitting a proposal because of time zone. So it's really important. How do you utilize the SMART methodology when data is insufficient? Yeah, sometimes data might be insufficient because an area is not yet well researched, for example. And I think in this kind of case, you do what you can do to the best of your ability, and then you make it clear why data is unavailable and how you are perhaps that would be part of the gap that your project will try to fill, provide data. But then if we're talking objectives, I'm really thinking about objectives that you need data for. Data is not sufficient for the SMART objective. I think it will be really hard because objective is what your project wants to do. So it's an offshoot of your own project. So ideally, based on your conceptualization of the objective, you should be of the project, you should be able to come up with SMART objectives for your project. So maybe Louise can really elaborate what she intends with that question. But for the SMART objective, it's to be derived from the project activities and everything you want to do. This is where you see it heading towards. So what do we consider to come up with a problem statement? Yes, Nashiba, really, like I said earlier, there are tools for needs analysis, problem analysis that would help you develop what your problem would be, the problem statement. But ideally, you wouldn't be talking about writing a proposal if there is in a problem you want to solve. I think everything that our work is about problem solving. We are not in business where it's about profit and, oh, what do people need? Let me just provide it and then get paid for it. So for the development kind of work we're doing, we are about solving problems that people are facing on a daily basis. So the very basis where the old thing starts from is a problem that you've identified. You're passionate about solving, and you believe you have an idea about how to solve, or at least how to contribute to a solution. So in that sense, you have an idea of the problem. So the problem statement is just you putting it together. And that would require you. So the problem tree analysis, for example, is one analysis tool you can use. And basically, the problem, just picture a tree, which I'm sure we're all familiar with. The roots are the roots are the root causes of the problem. So the trunk of your leaf of your tree is the problem that you see. So for example, the problem is lack of peaceful coexistence in Kachika community. That's the problem. The branches of the leaf of the tree are the effects of that problem. Or what is it leading to? Oh, there are riots and clashes and violence and killings and all of that. Then what are the root causes? That's where what is causing this lack of peaceful coexistence? Or ethnic intolerance, historical grievances, this and that. When you do this kind of analysis and you do it as a team with all the different stakeholders who know very well about the problem, usually you would be able to come up with a very good problem statement, because it would have really taken a bird's eye view of all the various root causes fueling the problem. And all of this is what you would use to develop your problem statement. Unfortunately, the time here does not allow us to be able to go fully into all of these things, but definitely, I think this is a place we can start from. Okay, is the goal the same as the impact? If not, the chain will be like this. Yes, the goal is like the impact, like the overall impact. That's interchangeable. So yes, the input goes into the activities, then the tangible output, the outcome, and then the objective and the goal. You are correct, Lucero. You're very correct. That's the chain. Thank you very much. Do we have any other questions as we wrap up? Okay, if there are no other questions, once again, thank you very much for your attention, and I really hope that we're able to maximize the benefit of this 2-day program, and hopefully we are able to just make the best of it. Thank you very much, and over to you, moderator, please.
Thank you very much, Halima. It has been an impactful session with you. I think everybody can confirm that it has really been an enriching one. So we thank you very much for your time and the knowledge you've shared. And hopefully we're going to put into practice what we've learned today from you. So basically, I think there was a question on certifications. So we emphasized that all those who are going to participate during these 2 days training session and will also fill the post survey questionnaire are going to be awarded a certificate. So endeavor to be here again tomorrow at the same time, 7 p.m. for the first session with Raisa, and 8 p.m. for the second session with Goni. Also, some of you have been asking about the materials for the training. Yeah, we'll ensure that at the end of it, those who will have those who will be awarded certificates will also have the benefit or privilege of having the materials and probably the recordings of these 2 sessions or the session entire training program. You will have those materials, those recordings, and the materials and the recordings. So hopefully we'll see you people again tomorrow at the same time, 7 p.m. West African time, for the day 2 of this training program. So I don't know, do we have any maybe questions or worries so we can handle them before we depart? Okay, basically, our worries have been handled already. So meet you again tomorrow, same time, 7 p.m. West African time with session 3 and 8 p.m. session 4. Thank you very much and good night to all of you.
Thank you, Yala. Good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.